You don't have to come back ever, haha. My mother-in-law said those mean words to me when I decided to go back to my family home and stay there for a while to have a baby. As I couldn't retort, she started packing my personal belongings into trash bags and even snatched the keys to my house. I guess there's no other choice. I grabbed my bag with just valuables in it and hurriedly made my way back to my family home. My mother-in-law wore a triumphant expression on her face, but little did she know that hell was about to descend upon her. My name is Charlotte, and I'm 28 years old. I work for a publishing company as a writer. I used to go to the office, but now I work from home due to the change in work style at the company. At first, I thought it would be difficult to concentrate on work at home, but after trying it, I found that it was not so bad, and I feel that I can work efficiently without wasting time. I got married to my husband, Mason, who is 2 years older than me, 2 years ago. Even after we got married, he respected my desire to continue working and supported my career. He had lived alone for a long time, has good housework skills, and takes the initiative to do household chores, saying whoever can do it should do it. He is still the same kind and wonderful husband I'm proud of, just like the way he was before we got married. I used to work from home half of the week, but recently, I transitioned to full-time remote work. The reason is because I recently found out that I was pregnant. Both my husband and I love children, and we had been eager to start a family ever since we got married. So, when we found out about the pregnancy, we were both overjoyed, and my husband shed tears of happiness. We discussed and decided that it would be better if I can work from home, because if I have to go to the office to work, I'd have to take a train. Since I had to work overtime a lot when deadlines were close, it was a blessing to be able to work from home. Moreover, the company, aware of my pregnancy, made extra efforts to accommodate my work-from-home situation. Despite the fact that I had more time at home since I worked from home, my husband continued to assist with household chores without a fuss. He wouldn't listen even when I told him I could handle it myself because I'm home all day. He has been especially considerate of the strain on my body since we found out that I was pregnant. He was gentle and very reliable, to the point that I thought he might be overly concerned. He seems to be really looking forward to the birth of our child, and he comes home early every day and does the household chores with great enthusiasm, saying he will become a good father. Seeing him like that made me happy. However, there was one thing that worried me. It was my relationship with my mother-in-law. Ever since I found out about my pregnancy, my mother-in-law started visiting our house frequently. She used to come occasionally, but recently she comes to my house almost every day, saying she is worried about me as I'm pregnant. However, my relationship with my mother-in-law had been terrible from the very beginning of our marriage. Her attitude towards me was less than welcoming even when I first met her, and it only deteriorated over time. She is so harsh on me that I can clearly tell that she hates me. Why did Mason marry someone like you? She would say mean things like that to me whenever my husband wasn't around. She seems to love my husband, who is her only son, so much, and I think she feels that I have taken her precious son from her. My mother-in-law said that she wanted to live with us when we got married, but my husband turned down her idea softly at the time. I believe this refusal still gnawed at her. When we turned down the idea of her moving in with us, she didn't back down easily, and she gave us a condition that we'd live close to her house if we are not going to live with her. We reluctantly agreed, and perhaps that wasn't a wise choice in hindsight. In the beginning, I tried my best to get along with my mother-in-law and endured her presence. However, it seemed like an impossible task. She would find excuses to call me and show up unannounced. It would be fine if she just came, but every time she came, she complained. Her complaints were all unreasonable, too. She suddenly comes over while I am folding laundry, and when I let her in the house, she gets angry at me that the house is messy. She doesn't understand that I work from home and assumes that I am not working because I'm home. Though I explained to her many times about remote work, she wouldn't listen, and she believes that I'm not working. Eventually, she started calling me a terrible wife who doesn't work or do house chores. Every time I saw her, she had something negative to say, and I honestly grew to dislike her. My husband warned my mother-in-law several times that it is bothersome when she shows up suddenly. Then my mother-in-law, instead of being remorseful, said she would live here. If I lived here, it wouldn't be an unexpected visit, right? She said, smiling with her strange logic. I thought she was joking, but I guess my mother-in-law was serious when she said that. To my surprise, she brought a lot of her belongings to our house. Even my father-in-law tried to reason with her and suggested she should return home. However, my mother-in-law would not listen to him at all, saying she was doing it for me. Charlotte is pregnant, so I will do the housework. It will put Mason's mind at ease, too, she said, and manipulated my husband and father-in-law. According to my mother-in-law, she was a caring mother-in-law who catered to a pregnant woman's needs, but the reality was far from that. When my husband was at work, my mother-in-law abused me verbally and nitpicked the housework I did regardless of whether I was working or not. She was being selfish, telling me that the way I fold laundry was wrong, or that the food was too salty when I made lunch. She would tell me to move faster as my belly was getting bigger and bigger and I was having a hard time moving. The time alone with my mother-in-law was so painful that I thought I would rather have gone to the office if I had to go through this. While I could endure her harsh words, I was genuinely troubled by her interference with my work. I'm sorry, Paris, but I have work that needs to be completed today. I once said this gently, hoping she'd refrain from disturbing me. However, she became even angrier. Stop lying! You have nothing but time, yet you don't even do housework. That's enough, you liar! She shouted and called me a liar. Dealing with my mother-in-law was incredibly stressful. For the sake of my unborn child, I tried my best not to provoke her. Interestingly, in front of my husband, my mother-in-law put on an entirely different facade. When he returned home, she would try to boost her own image by claiming that she did all the household chores. I didn't say anything, even though I was thinking, who is the liar here? However, my husband saw through her act and never believed her. I know you are the one who is doing the housework perfectly. Thank you. Even if I didn't say anything, he secretly thanked me when my mother-in-law wasn't around. I refrained from speaking ill of my mother-in-law, but my husband seemed to understand everything. One day, he made a suggestion with a serious face. My mom doesn't seem like she's going to leave anytime soon. I think this situation might negatively affect our child if it continues. I believe it's best if you go back to your parents' house for the time being. It was something I had thought about, but I never expected my husband to suggest it, which made me very happy. He must have been thinking a lot for me and our child. He also had another suggestion. The preparations are going smoothly. My husband and I decided on me going back to my parents' house for the childbirth and informed my mother-in-law about it. We kept it secret until we had a definite date in mind since we didn't know what my mother-in-law would say. When the date was set, we told her while we were worried that she might say that she would not allow me to go back to my parents' home. Though my husband and I were nervous, surprisingly she didn't say anything like that. Oh, I see. That might be better for her. I was a little surprised at my mother-in-law's simple reply, which I had never imagined. Maybe she was genuinely concerned about her grandchild. It seemed she might care for our child, her beloved son's baby. What's more surprising is that she stopped saying harsh words to me completely from that day on. At first, I was suspicious of her sudden change, wondering if she had an ulterior motive, but it seemed not. She still didn't offer to help with anything, but she remained quiet all day, as if she had turned into a different person. While she seemed to watch my every move closely, I was more comfortable since I didn't have to listen to those harsh words which I used to hear many times a day. My work became more productive thanks to my mother-in-law who became suddenly quiet. I could continue working from my parents' house, so I couldn't wait for the day to go back there. I was terribly sad to have to live apart from my husband for a little while, but I was happy to be away from my mother-in-law, more than anything. As I spent several days carefully preparing for the move, one day, my mother-in-law entered the room with a creepy grin on her face. She smiled so weirdly that I was wondering what she was going to do to me. Then she started putting my stuff, one after another, into a garbage bag in her hand. "What are you doing, Paris?" I asked hesitantly, surprised by her sudden actions. "You're going back to your parents, right? Then, you don't need your stuff here, do you?" She said with a smile and continued happily putting my belongings into a trash bag. I realized that she didn't say any harsh words to me or didn't insult me for the past few days because she has been waiting for this moment. She was going to kick me out, so she must have thought that there was no need for saying harsh words to me anymore. My mother-in-law looked very happy while grumbling that she feels so good because all the things she doesn't need would be gone. All I could do was watch my mother-in-law's actions because I couldn't understand what she meant and was too stunned to say anything. Then, taking advantage of my lack of resistance, she even took the key to my house from my key case. I couldn't remain silent any longer. "Why are you doing this?" I tried to stop her, but "You don't need this," she brushed my hand away. I was getting angrier and angrier at my mother-in-law's reckless behavior. "Why are you going this far?" I asked, still in disbelief. "That's because I can't stand you. I don't even want to see your face anymore," my mother-in-law said as she glared at me with a sharp look in her eyes. I was amazed at my mother-in-law for saying it so clearly, and I couldn't help but laugh. I thought this was a good opportunity to have a proper conversation. "Why do you hate me so much? Did I do something? Your very existence annoys me," she continued. "I don't know how you managed to trick Mason." As I expected, she seemed to dislike the fact itself that I married her son. I was shocked to see my mother-in-law getting angry with a red face. No matter how much I love my child, I thought to myself, I don't want to be this kind of parent. "I can't believe you're saying such awful things when you're about to meet your grandchild," I retorted, my anger rising. "I won't be able to think that a child you give birth to is cute anyway," she said heartlessly. "And honestly, I'm not even sure if it's Mason's." She even said such terrible things to me with a straight face. As she insulted not only me but also my unborn child, I became more and more angry, wondering how she could say such a terrible thing. I felt like an idiot for thinking even for a moment that she would adore her grandchild. I didn't want to talk to her anymore. "Fine, I won't come back here ever again," I told her. In response, she pushed my back while saying "Leave right now," with a delighted expression on her face. She pushed me out with such force that I thought she had forgotten that I was pregnant. She even threw my shoes at me as she kicked me out and slammed the door shut. I was about to burst into tears with anger and hatred towards my mother-in-law, but I held back. Fortunately, I had my cell phone with me, along with some electronic money. I wanted to at least take my bag, but I didn't want to see my mother-in-law's face ever again. My husband was still at work. Having no choice, I called my parents and decided to go back to my parents' home earlier than planned. The next day, I returned to my parents' house for the first time in a long time and spent the day relaxing. I had to come back suddenly yesterday, but my parents welcomed me warmly and I told them all about my mother-in-law. I couldn't help but cry when my mother told me that there is no need for me to get involved with my mother-in-law ever again and that I can give birth to my child without worrying about anything. I finally felt rested, not having to worry about my mother-in-law's eyes on me, not being verbally abused, and wondered when I've had a moment like this last time. However, there was something going on and I heard some noise at the front door. Curious, I went to see what was going on and I saw a surprising scene. My mother-in-law was apologizing, and my mother was trying to stop her. My mother, who was stopping her, seemed very angry with my mother-in-law and I heard her ask my mother-in-law to leave. There was no way that my mother, who had heard everything my mother-in-law had said to me, would forgive her, and she was looking at my mother-in-law with a very cold expression on her face. My mother-in-law was crying uncontrollably, saying that my husband had cut ties with her. What my mother-in-law didn't know was that I had informed my husband about everything that had happened yesterday. I had recorded my interactions with her on a voice recorder and sent the data to him when I left the house. My habit of using a voice recorder for my work had proven useful in this situation. Upon listening to the recording, my husband became furious and he said that he would talk to her, so he probably told her that he was cutting ties with her. My return to my parents' home wasn't solely because of what happened with my mother-in-law the previous day. As a matter of fact, when my husband suggested me that I go back to my parents' home for childbirth, there was one more thing he suggested. He mentioned that he might receive a job transfer, and he suggested that we move. Although he was going to reject the transfer due to my pregnancy, he started thinking that it might be a good opportunity to separate ourselves from my mother-in-law. Furthermore, the new location would be near my parents' house, so I agreed to the suggestion, of course. My husband had spoken to my parents about it, and they agreed to support us. I thanked my husband, and we had been secretly making preparations for this move. When I went to the front door, my mother-in-law was sobbing and saying that my husband told her that he was moving out. She cried and tried to get my mother's sympathy, but my mother seemed very annoyed. "Paris, you're causing a disturbance in the neighborhood. Please leave." I was not willing to talk to my mother-in-law, who had said terrible things to me, and I coldly shunned her. "Charlotte, please just come back once," she pleaded. "I still have your stuff. If you won't listen, I'll dispose of everything." My mother-in-law said this in a threatening manner and seems to be trying to get me to come back somehow. If I go back, my husband will come back, and I'm sure that she is going to kick me out again. I think she is a cowardly person. "I don't need them. You can throw them away." My mother-in-law was surprised by my unexpected words. In fact, my husband had sent all my necessary belongings to my parents' house in advance, little by little, without letting my mother-in-law find out. She had been too busy monitoring me, and it appeared she hadn't paid close attention to my husband's actions. My parents and I knew what my mother-in-law would do if she finds out, so we asked my husband to do everything discreetly. Therefore, the things she was trying to throw away that day were all unnecessary things that I sorted for disposal. As I explained this to her, her face turned more and more pale. "That's great, isn't it? Just as you wished. You never have to deal with us for the rest of your life. I just want you out of the house. I never said I wanted to be apart from Mason," my mother-in-law said in rage. I had told my mother about my mother-in-law, but my mother didn't realize how terrible she was until she saw it for herself, and she stared at my mother-in-law in shock. "Mason is only doing what's best as a father for our child. If you hadn't bullied me, it wouldn't have come to this. All you can do now is regret your actions." I spat out and kicked my mother-in-law out of the house. When I thought about what I had been through, these words weren't enough, but I felt really good to finally be able to truly get away from my mother-in-law. She continued to cause a scene in front of our house even after we went back inside the house. Because she was shouting so loudly that it could be heard even inside the house, and my mother, who was at her wit's end, called the police, and my mother-in-law was taken away by the police officers who arrived. It seems my father-in-law went to pick her up, and she received quite the scolding. Later, my father-in-law came to my parents' house to apologize, and he still keeps us posted on how my mother-in-law is doing. As expected, she was quite shocked when her son said that he was going to cut ties W. And she seems to have reflected on her actions and lives a quiet life now. My husband found a new house in the location where he was transferred and moved in ahead of me. Our new home is incredibly close to my parents' place, which reassured me that I can raise our child at ease. My parents are also thrilled that we'll be living nearby. I'm truly grateful to my husband, who prepared everything on his own. On weekends, we go shopping to look at baby clothes, and we are looking forward to the day when we can finally meet our child. While there are many worries that come with being first-time parents, I can't help but be excited about our future. I'd like to continue to build a wonderful home with my husband,